Hi, my name is Brett Roth, and I'm hosting today's episode of Money Talk. A little bit of background on myself. I've been with DLAC for about 3 years. I've been in the financial services industry for about 30. I do have my CFP designation, which is Certified Financial Planner. And my goal is to help educate and partner with families and businesses to help them get through their financial journey. And to that end, today we have Paul Kellogg. Paul is here from Phillips Law Firm, firm locally here in Cincinnati. He's an estate attorney. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thanks, Brett. Thanks for having me on today. I am an attorney with the Phillips Law Firm. We have a full-service firm located in Montgomery, Ohio, right near the original Montgomery Inn, actually. And I've been practicing law for over 30 years, ever since I graduated from the University of Dayton in 1993.
University of Dayton, 1988.
Very good. That's why we work well.
Excellent. Super. Well, thanks for the introduction. What we hear a lot from our clients who have accumulated wealth is they want to make sure that their wishes are respected, either when they're gone or potentially when they cannot make those decisions. If you could talk about some of the estate planning documents they should have to get started in that journey.
Yes, I think that your reference to it being a journey it fits in well with estate planning, because the estate planning documents kind of go on that same journey. So initially, we want everybody to have a financial durable power of attorney that allows somebody to make financial decisions for them in the event they are unable to do so because of disability, being unavailable for some reason for a business trip, or as they age and they no longer want to manage their own financial affairs. In that same vein, we also want to make sure that everybody has a healthcare power of attorney and a living will to manage health concerns. The healthcare power of attorney kicks in when somebody is unable to make their own healthcare decisions or communicate those wishes to their doctors any longer. So we always want to make sure we have those documents in place as people age and move through their life's journey. Then we always recommend that everybody at a minimum has a will. A will only becomes effective when you pass away, but it directs who you want to be your executor, who's going to wind up your final affairs on this earth, and where you want your assets to go. For younger families, it would also nominate who's going to be guardians if you have minor children. And then the final piece we almost always recommend is that some people create some sort of a trust. There's a lot of trust out there, but our basic recommendation is normally a revocable living trust to help people avoid the probate process as they transition those assets.
Great. Thanks for sharing. You mentioned trust. My question is, does everybody need a trust?
Well, I would say that not everybody needs a trust. There are a few situations where people have very minimal assets, or their estate is incredibly simple, and we can use beneficiary designations or transfer on death designations. But for most people, as soon as you have more than one child, and your assets get a little more complicated with real estate or significant investments, we do think a trust is the best way to avoid probate and also plan, like I say, plan for those contingencies. If something would happen to one of your children, or if a child or grandchild is disabled, the trust can plan in advance for those contingencies and kind of eliminate any uncertainty in the client's plan.
Thanks for sharing that. So obviously we've given some great information about what people should have. If you can, tell us about some of the common mistakes people are making on this estate planning journey.
Well, obviously the number one mistake people make is not having any kind of plan at all. Unfortunately, I've handled a lot of estates that were a complete mess because people didn't even have a basic simple will in place, especially when you get into situations where maybe people have estranged children or estranged family or second marriages. So the number one problem people have is they don't plan at all. Statistics I've seen say that 60% of Americans do not have a will. So there's a lot of people who have not planned at all. And then another big mistake that I see people make is they don't coordinate their assets with their plan. So a lot of times we'll work with a client and come up with this very detailed distribution plan, normally through a trust, of how they want their assets to go. But if those assets aren't owned by the trust or directed to pay into the trust when somebody passes away, they just circumvent the plan altogether and the plan doesn't go into place. And then, I think another big problem that we have is that people don't update their plans.
Right.
We generally recommend every 3 to 5 years people take a fresh look. You may have somebody in your plan that you no longer trust or is no longer appropriate in a certain role, or because of whether they age or your relationship with them has changed. So those would be the three biggest things that I would see.
Paul, thanks for sharing that. It sounds like everybody needs some sort of estate plan.
That's correct.
Now, there are some folks that probably have a little bit more sophisticated issues going on in finances. Can you talk about one or two scenarios that you've seen where you've had to be a little bit more complex in terms of the solutions you might provide?
Right. I'll tell you one scenario that comes up quite often, and I actually met with a gentleman on this yesterday, is second marriages. Older group. He's an executive at a local bank here in town, and he has just been married for 2 years. He has 2 children in college from his previous marriage, and so does his wife, has 2 children in college from her previous marriage. They both have accumulated significant wealth. They want to make sure they provide for each other, but they ultimately want their assets to go to their children. Makes sense.
So in that situation, what we've discussed with them is that we're going to create 2 separate trusts, one trust for each spouse, that the terms of those trusts will say, hey, if I pass away, my assets will go in this trust, and all the income will be available to my surviving spouse for their lifetime. And they can even dip into the principal for things such as their health, their education, maintenance, and support. But when the second spouse dies, those assets will then transition to their children. So that way you take care of the spouse, but you also make sure that the wealth that you've accumulated prior to the second marriage are going to your children.
Great.
Well, and then another scenario that's always more complex is when somebody is a business owner. Business owners pose a special situation because a lot of times we tell people that estate planning is not necessarily succession planning. So business owners need to plan on who's going to run your business, who's going to take over your business. What if you don't have family members who want it? Or a lot of times the estate gets kind of unequal because one child works in the business. So the parents want to leave that business to that child who's working in it.
Right.
And then, how do you take care of those other children who are not active in the business? Because one child's working in the business, they don't want to have their siblings be part owners, and so that they're working hard for them.
Right.
So those are the 2 scenarios that we see that really add a certain level of complexity. And then you always have complexity when you get into the very large estates, people with $15 million or more, because then you have to start planning for estate taxes, because the estate taxes are kind of in flux over the next year and a half about what's going to happen with it. That's awesome information. I appreciate sharing that. It sounds like, kind of wrap this up, everybody needs some sort of estate plan. And what's great is when you're working with someone like us and Paul, we're going to tailor the situation to your specific needs. So in closing, what I want to do, I want to thank Paul again for coming out and sharing this information. It's fabulous information. I'm sure our clients as well as first prospects might get some great information about this. Paul, thanks again for everything you've shared today. If you find yourself in the 60% of folks that either don't have a plan or haven't revisited it within the last 3 to 5 years, please reach out to your attorney, or you can reach out to me, Brett Roth at DLAC Wealth Advisors. My number is 937-6199-442. I want to thank you again for joining us for this edition of Money Talk. Thank you.
For all podcast or guest-related questions, please email us at dlacadvisors@dlacadvisors.com. For all questions or inquiries into the services that are provided by DLAC Wealth Advisors, please contact us at elliot.singer@dlacadvisors.com. That's Elliot with 2 T's. Please also visit our description for helpful links.